Everybody, welcome in. I'm so excited to be here today, and I'm excited that you guys are here joining me. We're going to be talking about something really awesome, a person who has followed me around my entire life in spirit. Okay. There's a very famous fortune teller that is from a county here in Georgia called Heard County. Her name is Mayhayley Lancaster. And so I'm going to be talking to you guys about her today because local legends and lore, they don't just always consist of werewolves and witches and dogman and ghosts and goatman. They also consist of fortune tellers, okay? People who are able to see into the past, the present, the future, mysterious people who are oftentimes considered to be a witch. All right, the legend of this fortune teller has intrigued me since I was a very small child. And my grandmother actually used to write stories for me when I was a kid, and I used to go perform those stories. And yes, I performed the stories at storytelling contests for my school, and I won those every time I entered them. Imagine that, y'all. So, but one such story that she wrote for me that I did win a contest on, it was called Mac and Miss Mahalie. And I was in maybe second grade when I did that. Which, by the way, when I won that, I won the overall contest for the county too. And they gave me a set of encyclopedia books about the solar systems and the universe and wormholes and black holes and all that stuff that and UFOs. So that actually really got me into what I do today. Okay. And so it has really snowballed in a lot of ways. Just learning about her and getting to study her. And yeah, the lady is called the Oracle of the Ages. Okay. And self-proclaimed, by the way. So today to talk about Mahalie and the area that she lived in, which is called the Troup-Heard Corridor. It's filled with UFO activity, very famous for UFO activity, paranormal activity, Bigfoot, Dogman, aliens, all that stuff. I have my friend Nick Valente here. He's a Fortean researcher into cryptozoology, and you guys probably know him from the North American Dogman Project, and he's also a big-time field investigator, just like myself. Please help me welcome to the show. We got Nick Valente here today. Hey, Nick.
Hey, Jessica. How are you today?
I am excellent. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thanks for asking me. This is great.
It is. It is. Now, when you were growing up, did you ever go see a fortune teller?
No, I never did, but I know they had circuses that used to visit the local towns, and my aunt went to see one, and she was absolutely amazed by what the lady told her. Unfortunately, I was really, really young at the time, so I was just thrilled to be at the circus, seeing elephants and people flying through the air on the trapeze, and real lions and tigers up close and personal. I mean, they didn't have any kind of fencing in them days. So if the tiger or lion decided to get away, people are going to go running, but nothing like that ever happened.
Oh my gosh. The dangers. Yeah. That's wild. Oh my gosh. Well, Nick, people from all over the country flocked to Miss Mahalie's house down in Heard County. And she passed away in 1955. So this was during the Depression. She was born in the 1800s. That's not the only thing that she was. She was not only a clairvoyant and was famous for that. She didn't become famous for this really until after she was part of a very famous murder trial in Coweta County. And there's a movie made about it called Murder in Coweta County, starring Andy Griffith, Johnny Cash, and June Carter Cash actually played her in that movie. So yeah, it was one of the most high profile murder trials, murder in Coweta County. But she garnered fame in Georgia and Alabama for her gifts, and she was known to charge $1.10 for psychic readings. She would tell everybody, "Well, I'm $1 for me and 10 cents for my dogs." Okay, so she had to get a little extra for her dogs, which she had a bunch of them, and she was known for having her dogs that would follow her around everywhere.
Yeah,
But
I understand she would take them to church.
she would, yeah, she would.
So they would go to church with her. Yep.
She would walk down the street to church. She was a very devout Christian, by the way, and people that knew her knew that she had God-given abilities. She never claimed anything but being a devout Christian, and of course, a lot of people, being a fortune teller and being psychic, people claimed that she was devilish, a witch. But people that knew her knew that she was definitely a servant of the Lord.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just don't get where they get that she was devilish and a witch and all that sort of thing. I mean, she never did anything to harm anyone. She would always do things and say things to help people out. What you mentioned, people coming from all over the country to see her, that's very true. From all the research I did on her, according to the research, it said that they would have cars and people waiting for almost a mile, waiting to see her. And she only tried to help people. She's described as a rather tall and thin woman. I don't know if people know this. She had one eye, and she would generally wear like a military jacket and cap, and which when we were discussing it, you said it might have been from her dad. But yeah, she had one eye, so maybe that added to her mystique. But there's nothing that I've read that said that she had an evil bone in her body. She was a God-fearing person.
That's right. Okay. Well, I'm gonna, before we get into Mahalie, I want to tell everybody how I encountered her as a teenager. Okay, and how her background, her spirit, all that kind of stuff. Right. When I was growing up, I grew up in Carrollton, Georgia. Okay, in that area, which is just north. It's north of Heard County, and so on the weekends, the fun thing for some people to do, not me, but some people, would be to load up in the cars and go to Mahalie's grave, that witch. I heard about that witch Mahalie, but see, I knew who Mahalie was because of my storytelling contest that I did when I was a kid. So I was familiar with her. I never saw her as a witch because I knew her actual background. My grandmother was actually writing a book about her, and back in the 1990s, I guess, 1980s or 1990s, my grandmother was writing a book about her because my grandmother was a women's rights activist. And I actually used to work with my grandmother because I actually worked for a women's organization as well. And so Mahalie was not only a clairvoyant, but she was a businesswoman. Okay. She was a farmer. She was the first woman lawyer in the state of Georgia. Okay. She had a whole bunch of, she was a political activist. She actually she was the first woman to run for the House of Representatives and the state Senate in the state of Georgia back in the 1920s, y'all. Yeah. And women's suffrage was what, 1920, I think?
Yeah. And that was 1926 when she ran for the Georgia legislature. And she was the first woman to do so, in Georgia. Yeah. She was a progressive, way ahead of her time. I mean, I really, from reading about her, I want to grab the book on her and read more about her because she's very interesting. And she just tried to help people. I mean, she ran on the platform advocating roads and railroads into rural counties, public schools, a passage of a law that mandated that doctors must deliver babies regardless of the family's ability to pay. I mean, that's very progressive. Even though she didn't win, her ideas were eventually carried out in not so far future. So, I mean, she was a very helpful person.
She was
So
a pioneer. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. She was a
very much
pioneer
so.
for women to progress into positions of power like that.
Yeah.
You got to start somewhere, right? And
Oh
somebody's
yeah.
got to do it and
Somebody
go
has to
blaze
do
the
it. Yeah.
trail. That's what she did in the 1920s, and she just didn't really. I feel like she didn't care what people thought about her. Okay,
Oh,
and
exactly.
and I think that that's one of the keys to finding your power is just not really worrying about what other people think, and being authentic. Super. I think she was probably one of the more authentic characters of this time. Okay. In the stories that my grandmother wrote for me that I spoke about, which, by the way, that story is in my grandmother's book. I didn't put this up there, but this is my grandmother's book. You guys, you can't buy this anywhere. I don't think,
Oh,
but it's a bunch of works that my grandmother did, poetry and stories that she wrote for my cousins and my sister and brother and I. But that Mac and Miss Mahaley's in that book, and so yeah. Oh my gosh, I lost my train of thought because I got into the book, but it'll come back to me. It'll come
well,
back. This happens every now and then.
you were telling me that your grandmother was started to write a book about her.
She was going to write a book about her, but she ended up putting it away because she got scared. Okay. Yes. Well, my grandmother's written her own book here. Okay. But she was going to write a book about Mahalie.
Right.
And so she got into writing it. And it was all about the women's rights part of it and blazing that trail. Okay. And for women, and it was about the legislature and running for political office and being a businesswoman and all that kind of stuff. Well, she got a phone call from a woman who, and this is back in like the 80s and 90s. There might have been caller ID, but I don't think my grandparents had it on their phone. Okay. And so the phone rang and my grandmother answered, and it was a woman she'd never heard of. She said, "Is this Nellie?" And my grandmother said, "Yes." She goes, "Well, hi, I am so-and-so. I'm from, somewhere down in Florida, Daytona, Florida." She said, "I have a message for you from Mayhayley Lancaster. She's asked me to contact you." And my grandmother had not told anybody she was writing a book. There was no internet back then. She didn't have a Facebook page. She wasn't announcing anything,
Right.
And the woman said, "Oh, sorry, my dog's barking." She said, she has a message for you, and she wants you to know that she's proud of you and she appreciates that you are writing a book about her. Like I said, my grandmother had never told anyone about that. She said she's glad that you're highlighting her political career and all this other stuff that's not just her clairvoyance and her fortune
That is
telling.
amazing. Was this lady a clairvoyant?
I guess so. She must have been a medium, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know the lady's background. I don't even know her name.
I was
But
just going to ask you if she gave your grandmother her name or
she
anything, if she
did.
noted it.
She did. Yes. She gave her name. My grandmother has it written down somewhere, but all of the notes that she was using to do the book, she put them in a bag, tucked them away in her closet, and never pulled them back out again. Okay. It terrified my grandmother. So she was actually scared a little bit, but now she looks back on it and says, "No, it was actually more cool, than anything." But at that point, she was a little scared because she was dealing with Mayhayley Lancaster, and and a lot of people did call her a witch and stuff. My grandmother didn't see her that way, though, of course. But yeah. So okay, so let's go back to when I was in high school. All right, with Mahalie. People would go to her grave on the weekends, and the rumor was, you go to her grave out in the middle of Heard County. Let me pull up a picture here, and things would happen to you if you go there late at night. Okay, mishaps. Your car would break down. You don't take a rock off that grave or out of that cemetery because you'll be cursed. Okay, it's I hate to say this, but I remember very vividly, people would joke around about how they urinated on her gravestone.
Oh,
Yeah, it was really bad. Yeah, and it made me very upset. This is actually her gravestone here. This is not the original gravestone because the original one was vandalized and destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now I had heard rumors that they had to exhume her body and they buried her elsewhere
Mm-hmm.
on an unmarked grave out in the woods. I don't know how true that is. Okay. But if I had a better picture of that, you'll see that they actually poured concrete over her grave.
Well, the rumors also had that people were trying to get down to her body and grave rob, get a piece of her so that they would get some of her power. And also, while you have the picture of the gravestone up there, my research shows that she actually passed away before her 80th birthday on May 22nd, 1955. That there shows November 22nd. So
It is
they're a
odd.
little incorrect there. I did extensive research on her, and there's a lot of rumor and stuff that does go on about it. And the grave desecration and grave robbing is that's just very sad.
It is.
People ought to know better than to do things like that.
They should know, but okay. So I was very upset about that when I heard that people were doing that. So what did I do? I had a platform when I was in high school. Okay. I was really big into mass media and making videos. I mean, you guys, I feel like all this stuff is kind of led up to what I do today and who I am today.
Yeah.
And it all started off with that storytelling contest with Mayhayley Lancaster. Okay. But I was really big into my mass media class, and we would do shows about whatever we wanted. And I had the coolest teacher. He would just let us leave school whenever we wanted to go film stuff. And shout out to Mr. Garrett. Okay. Back in high school. And so a group of friends and I, we met up with my grandmother one day, and she drove us out to Mahalie's grave at Caney Head Methodist Church in Heard County. And we were going to run some experiments and we are going to film it. Okay. And so this was back in the 1990s. Okay. And so my grandmother drove us in her big old Crown Victoria. And we got out there. And the thing was, if you drive around the cemetery 3 times, the car will go dead. Okay. The battery will die. The tires will go out or something, and so we went out there and did a whole bunch of experiments. We filmed the cemetery. Nothing happened, except some guy on a 4-wheeler came out of the woods and almost hit our car out of nowhere on the way in there. It was almost like a warning, like do not enter, but nothing bad happened. I got a bunch of interviews from people that knew her in town and things like that. And I did a show on it and that broadcasted over the entire high school. And it was really putting her in the light that she deserved. Okay. And it told about her history as being a champion for women. Okay. And running for office. And when women were known not to do that, and being a landowner and a wheeler and a dealer and a school teacher and a midwife. I mean, this woman was a jack of all trades.
She really was.
A healer. Yeah. But she was also the most well-known fortune teller to come out of Georgia ever, probably to this day, actually. And so I did a show about it, and we also addressed the idea of people going and desecrating her gravesite, and it really, if it didn't make people feel bad, I don't know what else I could have done. You know what I mean? Like, I wanted people to know who they were calling a witch, and so I think I did her justice. I hope.
Knowing you, most likely you did. You did do her justice.
Yeah.
But, like you said, she was like the most famous fortune teller or prophetic person to come out of Georgia. I mean, a lot of the things from what I've researched that she told people about that were going to happen in the future actually did happen. I mean, she found wedding rings that were lost, jewelry, money, lost cattle, missing people. I mean, she was tack on a lot of these things. Yeah, she did have a couple misreadings, but a lot of times the people just misunderstood what she said and didn't find what they were asking for. But she was.
Well, it can't always be right all the time.
Lady. It's documented, by a lot of people that actually knew her still today. I mean, yeah, it's a dwindling amount because it was a while ago, but still, the people that were interviewed. By the lady, I think her name is Dorothy Moore. She wrote a book about it. She started this a while ago and wrote the book. And those people, they did, face-to-face interviews, and every one of them, spoke really well of her. Oh, there it is. There's the book.
Mhm. Yeah, there've been multiple books written about her, and in a movie. If you guys would like to watch the movie, I bought this. It's like $2, $2.99 on Amazon Prime. You can watch the documentary about Mayhayley Lancaster. My grandmother's in it, by the way. Her name's Nellie. So she's in there talking about her experience with writing the book about her that never came to fruition because of her getting that phone call that day. But it's a really good movie, Mayhayley Lancaster, Legend of an Oracle. So y'all go check that out. It's really good.
You could throw that book up there again, the Legend of the Oracles, a picture.
Sure.
I just want to note something to people. This lady here, Dot Moore, her father, along with her two young brothers and her, they were driving down a roadway, and they saw Mayhayley Lancaster walking down the road, going to her house. Father pulled over, asked her if he can give her a ride. She got in the front passenger seat. Next to her was Dot Moore. They dropped her off in front of her house, and she turned, looked at the dad, and she pointed to the two boys in back and said, one day those two boys are going to become lawyers. And they did. She pulled Dot Moore, who was sitting in the middle. It's a bench seat. They had bench seats back then. Now we have bucket seats all the time. She pulled her onto her lap and said to her dad, and this young lady, she's going to write a book about me someday. And here it is. I mean,
that's right.
I'm sorry, but I get chills when I think about this lady, not in a bad way at all. I just very proud of this person who she was. And I'm really happy to have done research on her, because I think she did a lot of good. I mean, she was in her, I guess, 30s or 40s during the Roaring 20s. She dressed really well back then, and and then as time went on, she went into her military outfit and hat. But she was a very, very, very nice person. I would have loved to have known her.
She did, and she made a heck of a living being an oracle, and telling fortunes. She made so much money doing this because, like I said, people came from all over the country to come see her. And this is back in the day when there's just little back, country roads and things like that. So
yes, Jessica, she lived in a little shack with her sister. She didn't want the money she made, and
that's the cabin she lived in right there. And let me tell you, she made so much money after this famous murder case. We're going to get into this in just a minute, that she was a part of. She would take her money. She had to hire a bodyguard. Okay. She had to hire a bodyguard to make sure that nobody would rob her. Okay. And eventually her house was actually vandalized and burned to the ground by people. I guess they thought she was a witch or whatever. So, but she would hide her money. She didn't like keeping her money in the bank. And she had so much money, she would go hide it. She would go bury it in her chicken coops and stuff. And so the bank got upset because all the money was coming in with chicken poop on it. So they made her have to clean the money before she came in. But yeah, she actually became, she started reading fortunes when she was 6 years old. So she had this ability for a long time. Yeah, she did.
That was something.
Yeah. So she wasn't your typical fortune teller either, Nick. Oh. She would do really weird stuff that I don't even know. A lot of people probably not heard of, but whatever worked for her worked. So she would have a fireplace like a fire going in her fireplace, and somebody would sit down in front of her and she'd turn around and spit into the fire, and smoke would rise, and she could see the future in that smoke.
Here's something odd she used to do also. Several people commented on this. She had one eye, so she had a marble in her eye. The kind of marbles kids used to play with.
Oh, and
she would pop it out and she would polish it and then pop it back into her eye and continue with the reading.
She would.
She was a very interesting person.
That was actually part of the story that I told when I did a storytelling contest about her. Was about a little boy named Mac, or maybe the dog's name was Mac. I can't remember. I think the dog's name was Mac. But the little kid went in and I was telling the stories. I was the kid who lost my dog, and I went to go see Miss Mahalie to go have her tell me where the dog was. And she told me, this is in the story. She told me it was in a shed behind somebody's house. It was stuck in a shed. But I couldn't pay attention to what she was saying because her glass eye kept moving around, and she kept that glass eye in a tobacco sack, and she would pull it out and stick and pop it in her eye sometimes right in front of people. So it just added to the weirdness of everything.
Something I wanted to note about that, the money that she had. I mean, she was robbed a few times by people, and her family and the local sheriffs, they insisted that she put it in the bank, and she brought a deposit of like $30,000 one time.
Mm-hmm.
But she used to hide the money in glass jars in the forest around her own property because she didn't trust the banks. And they don't think that she put all the money in the bank. And to this day, from the research that I got, to this day almost, people are still looking around her property in the woods area adjacent to where she had a house to look for those jars of money. You know, they're going out there with the metal finders and stuff, you know, to see if they could find it out there. It's just amazing, you know, her life. Absolutely amazing.
Well,
I'm gonna have to get that book.
Yeah, it's a great book. Yeah, you know, and she lived through both World War I and World War II. And so families would come who had sons that were overseas fighting to find out how their sons were doing because they had not heard from their children. And so she would tell them if their sons were alive or dead.
And unfortunately, she wasn't going to, you know, back down from the truth. She told them straight as it was. And it seemed like, you know, she had to tell them the bad as well as the good. You know, yes, your son is alive, and no, he passed away on Omaha Beach.
It's sad. But it gave some comfort knowing that they were okay, or just to know what was going on with them. That's right. Yeah. Well, you know, she was a very devout Christian. All right. But she did not mind the lottery and playing the lottery. Okay. They called it playing the bug back in the day. And people would come to her to get the winning lottery numbers. Okay. And that's something that I've talked to about some of the guys on my team, because we're all trained in remote viewing and are very psychically switched on. Well, you know, is it okay to, you know, go pick lottery numbers? Is that cheating or whatever? Is it bad energy? Well, no, she totally did it. She would give people the numbers, but she had one stipulation. They had to split the earnings with her if they won something. And people did win things. They did win a lot of money. One woman pulled up in a Cadillac DeVille to her house and paid her a hefty fee. She had struck it big in the lottery and went and she was good on her word and gave Mahalie half of her earnings from that.
Well, you know why it's not cheating or bad? It's because she's helping people out.
Yeah.
You know, these people who came to her didn't have tons and tons of money. It didn't seem like anyway. I mean, I've done extensive research on her. I'm going to tell you. I mean, it seemed like just your common everyday folk, you know, just like you and I. I mean, they'd come to her and say, gee, you know, I'm looking for my son, or I'm looking for a lost wedding ring, or Mayhayley, you know, I'm really having a hard time now. Can you give me some numbers? And she did. And, you know,
nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. I mean, when she passed away, she left $200,000 and all of her estate to her sister. And like we were talking back then in the 1950s, 200,000 was like a couple of million because of, you know, how the money rises and falls in value. And these days, you know, a dollar isn't even worth $1 anymore. And back then it was worth a lot.
Yeah, it was. It was. Now, some people did think she was a witch. Okay. And that was because she would predict people's deaths.
Yeah.
And that was a big thing.
They asked her though. That's just it.
Exactly. Well, one lady went up with a group of her friends and was asking, you know, I want to know my fortune or my future. Can you tell me my future? And Mahalie looked at her hand and she said, no, I can't tell you. And so she got really sad, and all her other friends went in and they had their fortunes told. And Mahalie, and one of the friends said, well, Miss Mahalie, why couldn't you tell my friend her fortune or her future? And she looked at her, she said, because honey, she doesn't have one. And sure enough, that night she drove back from Noonan to Atlanta. And as she got into downtown Atlanta, she was in a car crash and died that night.
Yeah.
So yeah, she was very accurate. Okay. So
She's extremely accurate.
unfortunately,
the
fortunately.
predictions and the things that she told some people, the reason they didn't come true is because they misunderstood, or they just didn't use the information correctly.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Well, and another thing that was really what made her famous actually was her being involved in a couple of different court cases back in the day. And like I said earlier, one of them she was famous for was the murder in Coweta County. And I don't know if I showed this picture yet or not, but Johnny Cash and June Carter Cash were in that movie.
What a great
And
picture.
June Carter Cash played Mayhayley Lancaster in that movie. Okay, so I'll tell y'all a little bit about that, about these cases. Okay, the first case she was involved in, she wasn't actually involved in it, but she supported the man who was the defendant. There was a 13-year-old named Mary Fagan who was murdered when she went to go get her paycheck from the pencil factory. Now, I guess there were no child labor laws back then. I don't know. She was working at a pencil factory. But Mr. Frank, I think his name is Leo Frank, he was charged and convicted of her murder. Now, Mayhayley Lancaster said no, that he absolutely did not kill that girl. He did not. But there was like some anti-Semitism that was suspected, and he was kind of put on trial and convicted quickly and hung to death. Well, Mahalie always stood by the fact that he was not the one that murdered her. Okay, so she was, people knew her for that. And then there was another case, which they made the movie and the book about. It's about Wilson Turner, who was a sharecropper. He was working for a man named John Wallace, who was a very wealthy landowner, well-connected. He was in with the in crowd, a good old boy. And so Wilson Turner and his family moved onto the Wallace farm. They were moonshiners. Okay, they were moonshining. And so, but he began moonshining for Mr. Wallace, and he started taking money off the top. Okay, so skimming money. And Wallace kicked him off the farm. And so Turner came back and he stole some cows. All right. And this made Mr. Wallace really mad. He ended up murdering the guy. He killed him in front of a bunch of people, actually. They were eating lunch at a local restaurant. But the body, he drugged the body off, I guess, and went and he dumped it in a well, okay, out on his property. He had his farmhands help him. And so the guy who, Mr. Wallace, went to Mahalie to get some advice on it because he was afraid he was going to get caught. And so he wanted to know if the body of Turner would be found. And she said, "Oh, I see green flies buzzing around a well." Well, she didn't know that he had hidden that body in a well, but he knew that since she saw that, he better go exhume that body, get it out of there and do something else with it. And so he panicked. He got the body out of the well, burned it, and figured, it was gone. There's nothing to see here, right? But the policemen, they all knew that he was friends with Mahalie. So the police officers went to Mayhayley Lancaster's house and asked her about it. And she didn't cover for the guy at all. She said she told him what she knew, and they went over to Wallace's property and they found a bunch of burned bones and ashes, and with the testimony from Mahalie and his farmhands, the farmhands turned him in. They didn't want to get in trouble. They were able to take him to trial. Okay, and Mayhayley Lancaster was like the star of the whole trial. There. It was very, very well known, very famous. And so after that murder trial, she became very famous. All right. So traffic jams, lines of cars, people drove for hundreds of miles to see her. And that's when her home started getting robbed too. Okay. And, but yeah, even her cabin got burned down, at least once. And
it's funny though, that farmer, that rich farmer, George Wallace there, he had went to her previously before any of this had started, and he had consulted her on missing cattle, which she did help him on. So he actually did trust her, to help him find out what the law knew about the murder. And he, I guess he shouldn't have done that, not at all, but he got caught.
Yeah. Yeah, it totally got caught. And so, but that was the big story back then.
Oh yeah.
And it was such a big deal. I mean, everybody, counties around statewide, everybody knew Mahalie. Okay. But that's how she got famous. She was actually born with a call. If you know what that, do you know what that is,
Oh
Nick?
yeah.
It is, they say that there's folklore that says if you're born with a caul, and that means the placenta is still on your face.
Right.
Okay. I
The
know it's
mark.
kind of weird, but it's when babies are born with a caul, that means that they're going to be very psychic. Okay. Now, some people believe that that means you're going to be a vampire.
Yeah.
Okay. So, it just depends on what country you're in, I guess.
We didn't say long canine teeth. Now we said just a little mark
No,
here.
exactly. So she didn't go around biting people, but yeah, she was born with a call. So that was the first her first moments in this world. They knew she was going to be special, okay, because she was born with that on her face. Now, Nick, the area that she lives in and that she lived in is very well known for UFO activity.
Mm.
Okay. Um, Very high strangeness. It's an area of high strangeness from Bigfoot, Dogman reports. We've had aliens, mass abductions. Okay. Mass alien abductions of all things.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
called what, the Troup-Heard Corridor.
The Troop Heard Corridor. Yes. And
Yeah,
let me
and
tell y'all, this is a place that my team and I researched. Okay. And I do have some pictures. Okay. And first of all, I want to show everybody kind of where this is, because this is a huge area of high strangeness. It's near West Point Lake, in LaGrange, Georgia. If anyone's familiar with this, um, super well known for UFO activity. Okay. Um, UFO activity, mysterious events, they happen to this day, and I can attest to that because I was just there not too long ago, and I actually have some pictures from my trip, one of my last trip out there. I
mm,
actually took my son during the day, and it is very, very thick vegetation out there. um, you never know what you're going to get out down where we go. And actually, I was talking to Trey, the head of one of my teams. Trey Hudson was telling me yesterday that uh, that weekend that I went down there with my son, one of those nights that they were out, he recorded like an 18-inch orb that just floated there um, for quite a while. Okay, it just floated, and it, like I say, the area is a little bit dangerous. Okay, as far as the activity goes. So we don't give these locations away, but I can show you. This is a cemetery close to where we were hanging out. I don't know why there's concrete on top of those. But just like Mahalie has concrete on top of her grave too. So
maybe just to protect her grave, probably.
yeah, what's weird is that a lot of those graves out there, the concrete is sunken down really low. Like maybe the area flooded or something. I
Yeah,
don't
that's
know.
probably what. Well, over time, I mean, look, her grave is a little sunken, also. It looks like, and I guess over time, it's been what, 1955
Hmm.
to now.
50
So
years or so.
we're talking, about 70 years or so.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, yeah. I if you go online and you look up Troup-Heard Corridor, you're going to get a whole lot of reports about from MUFON. Okay,
Oh
MUFON,
yeah.
and a whole bunch of interesting accounts of people being abducted from that area, UFO abductions. Okay, so let's see. Stretching from east to west about 120 miles, south north for about 70 miles. The corridor includes Georgia counties of Upson, Talbot, Meriwether, Harris, Troup, and Heard, and some Alabama counties as well. Okay, that's in Georgia and Alabama. Um, an account includes a UFO sighting by two Cleveland County sheriff's deputies and a Ranburne, that's Alabama, residents. Um, let's see. Yeah, they're talking about there was a UFO on a radar out there that they picked up on a radar.
Right.
Okay. In Alexander City, a couple awoke to a terrifying shaking of their house in 1983. The inside of their house was lit up so bright, like it was daytime. Okay, when the couple got up, the light and shaking stopped, so they waited until morning to go outside and check. They were scared. The next morning, they saw a blackened area about 10 feet wide on their concrete driveway, and inside of which were several blasted out spots in a strange grid-like pattern etched a quarter of an inch deep to the driveway. The couple's son operated a concrete factory and believed the temperatures in excess of 750 degrees Celsius. They were required to burn the pattern. No, they said that it would have taken 750 degrees Fahrenheit to have burnt that into their driveway.
Yeah, to have burned that in excess of that, right.
In 1991, a man claimed he was abducted and taken to another planet where he saw gray aliens and smaller brown aliens and 2 American military officers working with them. That's what he claimed.
Yeah.
He said that his pickup truck had splotches burned onto it. And over the past 50 years, there have been reports of American military officers who were seen in the presence of aliens in that area. Okay. And there's also a report of a woman seeing a very tall alien who levitated into a white ball. Now, I've actually seen videos of aliens turning into orbs and orbs turning into aliens. So I know that it could be. That could be totally. And also there have been a lot of Bigfoot sightings in the 1980s down there. Okay. There's also the Alabama Air National Guard. An F-4 exploded in midair back in 1994. And after the explosion, 6 moonlight UFOs were seen floating through a cow pasture, okay, in the area. A fireman claimed that before the F-4 exploded, he had seen it just 2 minutes earlier chasing a missile-like UFO over Highway 27. Okay, that's in the area down there. And it was accelerating away from the E-4. The Air Force blamed a faulty weld on the outer combustion chamber of one of the plane's engines as the cause of the explosion. The pilot of the F-4 was killed, and the surviving weapon systems officer told Thompson, who's the MUFON investigator, he never saw any UFOs. Okay, so, but yeah, the West Point Lake has a lot of UFO sightings down there as well. 1994, there was a low hovering capsule-shaped UFO down there, and 3 witnesses back in 1994 saw a UFO in Franklin. That's in that area. They said it hovered low to the ground for a long period of time, and then it moved slowly away. I mean, I can keep going. There's a lot of reports down there, Nick.
I just wanted to add that, remember, you have Fort Benning, Georgia. That's the home of the 75th Ranger Battalion. And they're not called Airborne Rangers for nothing, because that's where you get your airborne wings. And I have to tell you from experience and from being down there and seeing things, they'll do daytime and nighttime jumps to qualify. And a lot of times they will have like these chem-light sticks on their parachutes, when they're coming down. So I would say that would be mistaken for, an orb, because the chem light is sort of lighting up the parachute as they're coming down, and they do it all times in the morning and the night. So that's one explanation for it out there. But you're right. Yeah. There's a lot of high strangeness out there. I know for a fact that we've had reports out of Randolph County of Sasquatch sightings. My team hasn't gone down there to investigate Sasquatch because we mainly do Dogman these days. But a gentleman came up to us and told us about several Sasquatch sightings that he had out there. There's been alien sightings out there, and an abduction case out there also. So, I mean, high strangeness, yeah. Georgia's got its share of them.
Yeah. Well, my team goes down there and does Bigfoot field research. Okay. So we know that there's we know they're down there. And there have been plenty of sightings. And my team even encountered something around the lake down there at some point. And we were kind of joking around about it being an aquatic Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Okay. But I mean, it could have been a lizard man or something. We don't know. They just said it was really big. I believe it was bipedal, and it jumped in the water. Okay. Oh. So, and they were down there kind of looking for Sasquatch stuff and some reports that have been going on around that lake down there.
Now, did you
So
guys see it coming out of the lake originally, or just walking towards
I
it
think it went into the lake. I think
into
that's
the
what it
lake?
was. Yeah. Yeah. I think it was going
Hmm.
in. I wasn't there for that. So I'm not sure. But it was something really big that went down there. But this is all in the area of Mayhayley Lancaster where she lived. It's a very anomalous area, very anomalous. So yeah, very anomalous. Now, there was another account, okay, of a mass abduction down there. Yeah. Oh, and police officers, Nick. Police officers had seen a lot of UFOs and reported them. Okay, so it's pretty credible coming from a
Yeah.
law enforcement official seeing UFOs.
I know,
Okay.
I know there was one report that I came upon that two sheriff's officers, there was a light that came above them. They were patrolling in the area of a football stadium. And when the light came on them, they actually, the driver, police officer who was driving, tried to get away and it just followed them. And their car, suddenly all the electronics, the radios weren't working. They were trying to call in the headquarters. None of the electronics was working. None of their lights were working. So they pulled over to the side and they had a handheld battery operated spotlight. And for some reason that was working. And they looked around and then they got out of there, using the spotlight because all the headlights and everything was not working at all. They had to take it to a
Wow.
garage and have it fixed. So that's kind of strange where everything just bummed out right at the site of a so-called UFO encounter. And
Wow.
it's very strange,
Wow.
extremely.
Okay, so and something is interesting. Bob Grumpy Wilson, he's in the chat today too. He's one of my teammates. He was a law enforcement officer out in California, and had some similar things happen with a lot of UFO activity out there, where the vehicle wouldn't crank, and lights were going off at the high school and coming on and off, and a lot of electronic malfunctions. And in 2003, two sheriff's deputies were out patrolling after midnight along Alabama 46. Okay, this is in the area. And their patrol car was suddenly bathed in bright light as if they were parked inside a well lit football stadium. Um, let's see. It says the officer driving attempted to outrun the light, but it continued to hover over them. And finally, they pulled off the road to get a better look. After a few minutes, a UFO, there was an actual UFO, departed, but all of the electronics in the car were rendered useless. So it sounds familiar.
Yeah, that's the one
Yeah,
I was talking about.
similar.
Right? Yeah,
It said the vehicle would crank and run, but the lights and other electrical equipment would not work.
yeah. That seemed kind of strange to me. I'm figuring
Yeah.
if electrical is off, why would it even crank over? And because that's electrical, your starter, your points, spark plugs, all that stuff. It's all electrical. I wouldn't think it would work, but
It is.
I guess they were lucky it did work.
Yeah. Oh, Nick, what's interesting about electrical equipment? I went to go investigate, do some research with my team this past weekend, out at the Meadow. That's one of our research areas, and so when I got out there, every time I go, no matter what vehicle I drive, I've driven several different vehicles out there, and they all have electronic malfunctions while I'm there. Every single one of them, and it's always my vehicle. Um, Either the lights will flash by themselves, the car will lock on its own, it'll unlock on its own, the alarm goes off by itself. And the last two times I've been there, the battery died. It completely drained for basically no reason, because I made sure this past time to shut the doors, and make sure, I don't want that to happen again. So I got all my equipment out and I shut the car up, so that the batteries wouldn't die
Yeah.
this time. It died. It died real bad. Okay, the batteries died. So I had one of those little battery packs that little chargers that it was all
Mhm.
charged up, and the car
Yeah.
cranked right up. But it's every time I go out there, it's always electrical malfunctions for me on my cars. Yeah.
I'd
So
like to mention that you should take little Lumi lights like this, that you
mhm,
crack. You ought to
yeah.
take those with you when you're out there because you never know. All the electronics might go off for some reason or another, and at least you'd have some sort of lights with these little chem lights.
Yeah.
What does this caller say?
Oh, they're talking about how firemen help Bigfoot out of the California fires. I've heard that before
Okay.
too. Yeah. Yeah, I've definitely heard that before. Yeah, so there was MUFON took a report. We'll talk about this too.
Oh, yeah.
MUFON had taken a report back in 1998 of a giant flying saucer that was flying around the Troup-Heard Corridor, and the Lagrange is where this is at, the area. He said 3 silvery dark beings about 4.5 to 5 feet tall entered his home by coming through his bedroom wall. He said they seemed to freeze him and they took him through his bedroom wall. Okay. He explained kind of what they look like. I have a picture right here of, I got this, actually, this was out of, I found this online somewhere. Okay. So, but this was the report from MUFON and they looked similar to that. All right. So they entered his home at around 2 a.m. It was a weekday night in 1997. He said that he could not move his head and but he could move his eyes when it happened. And he could see the outside of their craft. It exceeded 1,700 feet, he said. And he said it looked like something, nothing he'd ever seen in a movie or television before. But he explained in great detail about exactly what it looked like inside the craft. He didn't even need like hypnotic regressive therapy or anything. He just remembered it. But yeah, they did some experimenting on him. Okay, let's just say, and they left him with some burn marks on his body. Okay, and yeah, he just he said it wasn't a joke. It was not a joke.
Yeah,
and
he supposedly showed a friend the burn mark also.
Yeah,
so that definitely was no joke.
Yeah.
You know, that corridor area, according to research that I've seen, and I tried to get into some of the different airport loggings to find out why this is so, but there is a problem out there where their radar it has a 2,000-foot ceiling. So, you know, anything could actually hide underneath there. You know, it wouldn't be seen. And that 1,700-foot flying saucer that he was talking about, I guess that would have been under the 2,000-foot mark. So I'm just wondering what's going on out there that they have such a 2,000-foot ceiling for radar.
That is interesting. I mean, it could be something to do with the military out there in Fort Benning.
That could be, yeah.
It could be. Maybe there's areas out there where they go do practice drills and stuff. I mean, who knows? It is such an area of high strangeness, though, and a lot of reports are that there are military officials working with the ETs out there. So, this has come up in some of my data before, actually. When I was remote viewing the Dyatlov Pass in Russia from the 1950s, I picked up on government, military, and ET working together in there, and that was what caused some of their deaths. Actually, I think they got too close to some kind of secret project they were working on out there, or something. But who knows?
Those teenagers from, what's it called, Dalton Pass or something?
Dyatlov Pass. It's in Russia. Yeah. Or back in Soviet Russia.
That was strange. You know, I had checked into that and researched that myself in the past. And I don't know, I came up with an idea that since the Russians have fiddled with so many different types of weapon systems, they may have been using some sort of sonic system, because those people ran out without shoes and clothes on and shirts and stuff.
They did.
They ran for no reason away. And I'm just wondering, because, you know, certain sonic sounds can really affect the brain. And that was just one of my theories that I had on that, because there's just no reason they should have done what they did.
Well, you know, I can tell you what my data suggested was that something came from the sky. They said it looked like umbrellas that were lit up. Okay, so I believe that could have been some sort of like a parachute bomb or something that would light up the area that the military uses. And that's because I did remote view it, and I did ask them. I got in their heads, all of them, and asked them exactly what happened to them, and they all said that it came from the sky, and it looked like umbrellas falling from the sky that were lighting up the area, and it scared them, and they took off running. It wasn't the Russian Yeti. Okay. Like people
Yeah.
had thought it was kind of blamed on the mink, which is the Russian Yeti for out there. So, Candy has a great point. Hey, Candy, she wonders what Mahalie would have thought about Bigfoot.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if she didn't have a relationship with some kind of those Sasquatches out there. Who knows?
Excellent question. Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. And also, I'm not, you know what? I'm not sure if this is near the ley lines. Let's see. I don't have my picture pulled up right here. There could be ley lines that go right over this area, Heather. I'm not sure. I wouldn't be surprised if they are, though. I'm gonna have to look at that map that I've got. I'll do that after the show today, and maybe we'll try to compare. So let's see. Caney Creek. I think it's Caney Creek. There we go. Caney Creek. That's where Mahalie lived. But yeah, it like I said, it's just a area of very high strangeness. And when I was growing up, the thing to do was to go out to this haunted cemetery where Mayhayley Lancaster was buried. And but I don't know. I hope that Mahalie did haunt those people that hurt her grave. I wouldn't hold it against her if she did. So
No, that's just not a nice thing to do. People ought to know better than to do that.
yeah.
I mean, this grave robbing stuff should have stopped way back when, in the 1700s. We've progressed too far.
We have. Well, I don't know, Nick. I think this has been a really interesting discussion on Mayhayley Lancaster. I'm trying to remember what was written on her grave. Let's see. So, not everybody believed.
How you doing, Sue?
Not everybody believed in her. And I forgot, there was something really sweet that was written on her grave. Let's pull the grave up, actually. I've got a picture of it, don't I? I think it was a Bible verse, and it said, for neither did his brethren believe in him either, I believe.
Right.
I believe that's the quote. And I think that's really cool because not everybody believed in her, but my goodness, she was the oracle. No, that is not the original.
No,
that is not the original. But she also considered herself a biblical fortune teller. Okay, so I think that's pretty interesting as well.
It's a shame the lady did not write her own book.
I know. Okay, so
amazing.
So for neither did his brethren believe in him. St. John 5th verse. Okay, that's written on her tombstone today. And so I just think this woman was an amazing human being with exceptional enhanced human capabilities. She was not afraid to use them. Okay, she was not scared. She didn't care what anybody thought about her. She just absolutely wanted to help people, and she made a lot of money doing it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that whatsoever. And so I just wanted everyone today to get a little glimpse into the life of Mayhayley Lancaster, and just see how far we've come since she was alive, and how she was able to be such a groundbreaker and a trailblazer for women like myself. I feel like I've had such a connection with her ever since I was a kid. And even, Nick, when I started reading oracle cards and tarot cards, this is how I kind of started my YouTube thing. I started a YouTube channel, and I knew people were going to make fun of me. I'm out there reading cards and stuff and giving spiritual advice to people who didn't ask for it. But people have an option of subscribing or not. And I started getting a nice little, following there. And I called myself Oracle of the South. Okay. And I did not really think about Mahalie when I did that, but somehow, down the road, I was like, oh, wait a second. She was the Oracle of the Ages. So,
you've actually been influenced by her in many ways.
I have been 100% influenced by her. And I think a lot of people have. I mean, people write songs about her. There's a band named after her. It's just a lot of people. She's a local legend. Okay. Mm-hmm. So that's why I really wanted to do her justice today, and show her as the healer that she was, a political activist, a businesswoman, a clairvoyant, someone who could truly tell you your future and help you in any way she could. So
It's
yeah.
funny how times have changed around. Back then, she did come out, and she wasn't afraid to, use her gifts. These days, people come out and they're more like charlatans. They're using fake, so-called fake gifts because they want to make money and they want fame and fortune. I mean, we don't really have
That's
many
right.
people like Mayhayley Lancaster around anymore,
Yeah.
really. Uh, she wasn't afraid. People nowadays are afraid to come out and say, "Hey, I had a Sasquatch encounter, or a sighting, or a dogman encounter, or this or
Hmm.
that." They're afraid because they're going to be ridiculed. I mean, my God, people, this is 2022. Let's get on with the times here.
Hmm.
People say a lot of things, they do a lot of things, and they're not ashamed of it. So come out and assist in our search for the truth. And
Yeah.
it can't really hurt, unless I guess you're in a position where you feel you can't do it because you won't get a promotion into your law firm or something if you come out
Right.
and say you were abducted. So
Yeah. Well, Nick, I didn't go public with my research for at least 10 years. Because I worked I worked for the state government for a long
mhm.
time, and it wasn't really that. I mean, people there kind of knew that I did go out and go bigfooting, and I just said I went camping. Okay, so I did a lot of camping when I was
Yeah,
younger, camping, but there has been a stigma to it, and there's a stigma to reading tarot cards. I mean, people can use that against you and call you a witch. It happened to me. Even during a divorce, okay, that kind of stuff,
uh,
people will use whatever they have against you, and that's one of those things. Look at the Salem witch trials, okay, and those poor people weren't even probably doing divination.
yeah.
They were just being accused of being witches, probably just because people didn't like them.
That's what happened a lot of times.
Hmm.
The ladies at the time didn't do what some certain people wanted them to, so
Right.
they figured they would get revenge on them and burn them. And that's definitely, I mean, that's called murder now. I
It
mean, that's
is.
not called, getting rid of the witches in the county or in our city. That's murder. That's pure, plain and
It
simple murder
is.
and ignorance, actually total ignorance of these
Yeah.
people. If they really looked about the history of witches, they would see that witches actually were people that tried to use their knowledge of, like, you know
Plants.
vegetables, spices,
Yeah.
plants, herbs, and the like to help people, to cure animals, to cure a burn or the like, or if somebody
Hmm.
was sick, to help them out that way. I mean, the Native American Indians used their knowledge of plants and herbs and such to help their own people. And they
Yeah.
weren't persecuted for that. They were persecuted for other things, but not for that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just crazy. People just don't get information. Well, back then they didn't get information and they didn't follow through with it either.
Yeah.
It's a shame. It's a shame what our history has proven out to happen.
It
Things that did
is.
happen in the past.
Well, I looking back when I was a kid and growing up and a teenager, we're kind of taught. Uh oh, my internet. Okay. Am I
Oh,
back?
you're
I think my
good. You're
internet
good. You're good
my
the whole
internet
time.
froze. Oh, I was? Okay, because it sounds like it's going off in my earbud here. Okay, so when I was a teenager and we're reading about the Salem witch trials and we're thinking, oh, those are witches, they burned the witches. Well, what about the people who actually burned them? you know, like what
Yeah.
we're never taught to like look at those people like they were murderers, and killing innocent people. We're taught, oh, they burned the witch because there were witches there,
Mm.
So it's all about perception. It's all about the way history's written. And
And it
yeah,
wasn't
it's
just here; it was also in Europe. I mean, look at Joan of Arc.
mhm.
Look at other things in Great Britain and in France. I mean, they were burning people left and right. They accused them of things, and a lot of times it was the people in charge of the government that put out the
Mhm.
word to have these people punished, and gotten
Yeah,
rid of because they didn't agree with them. So, I mean,
yeah,
witches, from what I've read and researched, they were just tried to help people. That was from the
yeah,
beginning, and then it took a poor turn because, as in anything, you're going to have people that are going to take a certain way of life and turn it to a bad thing, like
Yeah.
the sacrificing of cats and goats and sheep and animals. And then it went on to sacrificing of people. I mean, the Mayans did that so that they would
Yeah.
bring rain, or bring prosperity for their people. They would kill people on the altar too, but at least they didn't call them witches. They just took people out because they thought they were doing good and they had power and it showed their power. But killing people doesn't show power. I think doing good for people actually shows power more so. And Mayhayley Lancaster, yeah, she was a good person. I believe so anyway.
She was. She was a good lady, and she helped a lot of people. She scared the heck out of a lot of people too, I think, because there's a lot of power in being a seer. Yeah, a lot of people don't want to hear the truth. They want to hear it, but then when they get it, they don't want it.
Right.
So yeah, speaking of witches, my friend Tanya and I, she is a remote viewer. She and I are both going to be remote viewing the Salem witch trials. For next week's show, a week from Friday. We are going to be looking into different aspects of it. I don't know what aspects. I have no idea, but we're going to be looking at it from different angles and as a whole. Okay. And so that's going to be a very interesting show. So I hope everybody will tune in for that. A week from Friday, we're going to be doing that. So
maybe you can get into the minds of the prosecutors, the people that did it, along with the people that were burned. And everything, and see what was going on.
Yes, we don't know what we're going to be assigning each other for targets. So but I can guarantee you it's going to be a fun show. It's going to be sad, probably. I think it'll be very healing for people too, because I feel like a lot of people feel connections. If you believe in past lives, if you believe in reincarnation, I think a lot of people, women and men, feel a connection to that time of persecution and that energy. So we're going to be looking into that because there's a lot of innocent lives lost for that. And
it'll be a great show.
It will. And so this Friday, I'm actually doing a show about a vampire, out of Wisconsin. So there's an actual vampire, reports of a vampire out of Mineral Point, Wisconsin. And I actually remote viewed that guy. And it's going to be weird.
Is he still around today, or is it?
I think the last report was in like 2004, maybe.
Oh, okay.
I don't think there's been another report since then. So, yeah. Hey, Jeremiah. Jeremiah Fountain's in the chat.
Jeremiah, how are you, buddy?
Yeah. Oh, and Jeremiah is actually going to be my guest on Space Out Radio this Saturday night.
Oh, great.
Y'all know I have a ton of shows. I do a lot of shows every week. So Jeremiah's on there, and I got D.A. Roberts coming on Sunday. So, but Jeremiah's coming on. We're going to talk about Sasquatch and Dogman and all that fun stuff. I can't wait. It's going to be a lot of fun. But yeah. And yeah, I do read tarot cards, and you know what? People do call tarot card readers witches. I've been called that, actually. And there's a story behind it. I'm not going to say it on air right now. I'm not ready to talk about it, but yeah, I had an incident with that. So, and I'm like Mahalie. I am a woman of God, and I'm a biblical tarot reader. Okay. We'll just say that. I don't know. I'm in the light. Okay. I'm of the light. And it can be, but it's an easy scapegoat. Okay. It's an easy scapegoat. If somebody doesn't like you, or they got something that they want to hold over you or whatever, and say you're a witch because you read tarot cards, and that's what Mahalie probably went through. And that's why you have to be like, well, just not caring about what people think. I think that's what it is. Yeah. It's all about that persecution. Right.
Just be true to yourself and
right.
What you feel is right.
Yeah. Exactly. All right. Well, I think we covered a lot of good stuff today, Nick. The Troup-Heard Corridor. If anybody's ever interested, y'all go down there and check out the UFO activity down there. Go to West Point Lake, and there's a lot of really cool action down there when it comes to the paranormal. So, Yeah, I'm really excited. I'll be going back down there not in too much longer, so I'll let y'all know how it goes with the activity down there. But yeah, all right, Nick. Well, thank you so much for being here
Oh, thank
today
you,
and joining
Jen.
me. And I want to thank everybody in the chat. Hello,
You're
hello.
still
Am I
there.
am I there?
You're
Okay,
still
because
there.
my computer keeps freezing up, so I'm still on there, but my computer's frozen.
You're
Okay,
still
so
moving, and I can see you talking, so everything's good.
yay, we're all a-okay. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for being here today and for allowing us to share the story with y'all. Nick, you are amazing. You did a lot of research. I'm very impressed and very excited that we were able to do this today.
It was an interesting subject, and I thank you for having me on.
It
And
was.
everybody out there, have a great rest of your day, please.
You do. And everybody, use your God-given abilities, please. Okay. And shine bright and put it out there. And if you've got clairvoyance, if you've got whatever in your life, any kind of God-given talents and abilities, put them out there for everybody to appreciate and to enjoy. Okay. Because that's why we're here. Okay. So, yeah. So, thank you, everybody in chat. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. And y'all join me, I guess, I'll be on Brunch with Bigfoot tomorrow with Rob. And then on Friday, I'm remote viewing the Vampire of Mineral Point, Wisconsin. So, I will
That's a
see y'all
busy
Friday.
lady. Yep.
Yeah. I am a busy lady. I am. And so are you, Nick. You're busy too. I know. Okay. So everybody have a great week. And I will see y'all, I guess, tomorrow. Y'all have a good day. Bye.
Take
Bye,
care.
Nick. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
I